Alrighty, guys. So we're gonna be doing things a little bit different, like Amy has said. So Project Contact Programs Manager Philip here is going to be interviewing members of the team staff. Well, welcome, Philip. I understand you have a bit of a challenge for us today.
Yeah, thanks, Yanazel. It's good to be here. Good morning, everyone. And yes, we'd like to make things interesting. So everyone, if you can get out a piece of scratch paper and your favorite writing implement, you're all going to be hearing the phrase Project Contact a million times this morning. So every time you do, make a tally mark, and our official scorekeeper, Jesse Mantilla, will be keeping track as well. So at the end of our presentation, we'll ask everyone to submit their tallies via the chat. We'll check in with Jessie to see her final tally. The person who's closest to her number without going over will get a prize. So Jessie, are you ready?
Sure am, Philip. I got some mechanical pencils right here, and I do have some extra lead, and I know that we'll be hearing Project Contact a lot this morning.
Well, Philip, I can't say that we ever had a presentation like this, so I'm looking forward to see what else Project Contact has to inform everybody today.
Well, thanks, Yanisel. As we get started, I just want to give a brief introduction for myself. I am Philip Scher. I'm a senior clinician here at the agency and have been here for just over a decade. Some of my duties include seeing clients for trauma work through TFCVT, ITCT, and CFITC, which we'll talk a lot about today in Project Contact. I also run the adolescents with problematic sexual behavior group. But today I'll be focusing on my role here as a project manager for Contact. So through that, I, along with Joel, who you'll meet shortly, we interface with a lot of the community members throughout the St. Louis region so that we have a chance to get to know people and also connect people to our CFITC resources. So I will keep that brief for now because you're going to hear a lot more details about the project itself. But just know that you may see my name and through email communications, and we look forward to kind of connecting with you all. And at this point, I think it'd be a good idea if you hear a little bit more about the project from Joel himself. So I'm going to introduce Joel Epstein, our Project Contact Principal Investigator.
Joel, you're muted.
You do, Joel? Yeah, Joel, you're muted.
Thank you. Sorry about that. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to talking with you all. To set the record straight a little bit, I don't know about everyone in our audience, but one of the first things I learned when I came to our agency was that no program is very good unless it has a really good acronym. And so I had a lot to live up to when we were creating Project Contact. And we came up with CONTACT means Community Operations Network for Treatment After Childhood Trauma. It's a 5-year, about $2 million grant, and it was awarded to the Children's Advocacy Services of Greater St. Louis by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. Our goal is to create this network of community partners who refer families to our child and family traumatic stress intervention. Project Contact is just about ready to start up our 3rd year of service. We serve children in the St. Louis City and County area, ages 7 to 17, who recently experienced trauma. I could keep going on and on about this program. I'm really excited about it, but I think now would be a really good time to show our video.
So sounds great. Yanisel, could you cue that up for us, please?
Yes, I will. It's coming right up.
Indiana Zell, if you could stop it and share it again with the sound, please. Thank you.
Hi, Charlotte.
Hi, Jordan.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome to Joke Time, episode 42.
And a special shout out to Miss Alyssa.
Yeah, she wrote us to say how much she liked our last show.
About how we went to Six Flags.
And how you puked on the Screaming Eagle.
I did not.
Did you?
Did not.
Whatever. Anyway, we've got something much different planned for today.
Much different.
So all of you who watch us for the laughs, hold on. This show's gonna be a little more serious.
As serious as a car wreck.
Jordan, that is not funny, but yeah, let's talk about that.
About a year ago, we were riding in the car with Mom.
She was taking us out for ice cream.
I never did get that in a split concrete.
Yeah, that's because that guy ran right into us.
I don't remember it happening. I just remember waking up hanging upside down.
The fireman had to cut us out of the car.
And Mom was screaming and screaming.
It was scary,
Super scary.
but we were okay.
Well, sort of okay.
Yeah, we didn't have any broken bones or anything.
But we didn't want to get in any car after that.
Yeah, Mom used to get so mad at us.
But I'm sure glad she finally found out about the Children's Advocacy Center.
And their project concept. We first met with Mr. Andrew.
He helped us fill out all those forms.
And he told us that sometimes he helps other families who need other kinds of help.
Like transportation to the CAC.
Luckily, we were able to meet with him on Zoom and didn't have to get in a car.
Yeah, you were still scared then.
Mr. Andrew said that we'd be meeting with our therapist, Miss Yvette,
She was awesome. She spent some sessions just with Mom.
and some sessions with just me.
And some sessions just with me. And she told us that the accident wasn't our fault.
Even though we were fighting in the back seat,
And she taught us what to do when we were feeling really stressed.
like those breathing exercises.
In just about 5 sessions, we were feeling much better.
Yeah, we could get in the car again.
And Mom wasn't so grumpy anymore either. So we want everyone to know how great the CAC is in Project Contact,
They're helping kids like us
ages 7 to 18.
who have had really bad or scary things happen to them.
And it doesn't cost anything.
They're working with places all over St. Louis who see kids.
Like hospitals and schools.
They're telling them about Project Concept. Contact.
So that other kids can get help just like we did.
And they won't feel so scared to ride in cars.
Or whatever.
See, I told you that this was going to be a different show.
Yeah, but it was good.
Not as good as you puking on a screaming eagle.
I did not.
Did too.
Did not.
Did too.
Did not.
That was great. And a special shout out to Jack and Vivian, kids of Caskell's Director of Programming, for playing the roles of Jordan and Charlotte.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the awesome things about Project Contact is that we receive so much help and support from folks all over the agency.
Yeah, that is so true. And to continue on that theme, I'd like to introduce Courtney Neff, one of our forensic team's family advocates. The forensics team was one of our agency's earliest units. So welcome, Courtney. Can you tell us just a little bit about what's meant by a forensic team?
Sure. Good morning, Philip. Yeah, so the forensic team is just one part of the Children's Advocacy Center here at UMSL. The forensic team works really closely with many of our MDT partners to respond and assist in reports of child maltreatment. And it was developed originally as a response to the failed prosecution of child sexual abuse cases. And it has grown to include victims of physical abuse, neglect, community violence, child witnesses to crimes such as domestic violence, and gun violence as well. Many of our children that we meet start with referrals from law enforcement and child protection units and our MDT partners that we work closely with. So the forensic team follows the CAC model, and that provides a child-friendly place for families to bring their children after experiencing or disclosing a traumatic event. Caregivers can bring their children to one of our 2 centers to have a forensic interview by a trained forensic interviewer who is knowledgeable in child maltreatment and child development. It also provides a place where all of our MDT partners can convene to work together and respond to reports of child maltreatment. Some of the MDT partners that we work with are representatives from child protection, law enforcement, prosecution, medical and mental health services, and also juvenile and family courts. So the goal of the CAC model that the forensic team operates under helps to expedite the investigation as well as to prevent re-traumatization of the child and the family by being interviewed by multiple investigators possibly. It helps to create an organized and coordinated response to victims and families' needs. Like I have mentioned before, when a child comes to the CAC, they meet with one of our specially trained forensic interviewers who is knowledgeable in child development and the dynamics of child abuse. And at the same time, myself and some of my other coworkers that are family advocates meet with the non-offending caregiver to provide support throughout the investigation process. So whenever we meet with caregivers, some of the things we talk about are just the investigation process in general, the dynamics within their family, safety planning needs that they might have, and we also provide a lot of psychoeducation so that they can best support their child after having experienced a traumatic event. And then lastly, some of the other things that we talk with caregivers about, we provide support and linkage to some mental health services as well.
Yeah, sounds like a lot. What are some of your favorite parts of your job?
That's a good question. I would say my favorite part of being a family advocate is being able to talk with some of the clinicians within our agency after they've been our families that we've worked with have been connected to services and hearing how they're just thriving after being connected to therapy in general.
Yeah. And then, so speaking of therapy, like how does your work fit into Project Contact?
Yeah. So we work really closely with the clinicians family engagement specialists, who I'm sure you will learn about a little later. And then also some of our clinical intake team. We provide a lot of referrals to Project Contact, but just by the nature of who we see and who we talk to during the forensic interview process. So many of our families are really interested in being able to get their kids into some type of treatment immediately after they've disclosed or been through a traumatic experience. So we provide a lot of referrals to Project Contact and also provide a lot of information about our families.
Well, thanks, Courtney. We really appreciate all the support you provide for Project Contact. And earlier you mentioned that most of the referrals the forensic team receives comes from our partnerships through the MDT, the multidisciplinary team. So we're going to take a moment and poll our audience. How many of you work at an agency that is within Caskell's MDT? So Yanisel, can you please pull up that poll? You getting all the responses?
Yes, we have just a couple more people and then I'll be able to show the results.
All right, sounds good.
Alrighty, these were our results.
All right, we have some fascinating results. We see that over 50% of the ones that answered yes or no were part of our MDT. So we appreciate having all sorts of members being a part of our speaker series, but we also know that like a lot of our partners work directly with us, and we're excited to see you all here. And we have a pretty even split from the yeses and no. So this is really interesting to see. Before we go on, I want to check in with Jesse. How's our tally for mentions of Project Contact so far?
My pencil is on fire over here. I'm on the second one already.
Okay. Well, sounds great. We'll check in again with you later. But now I'd like to turn to Kirsten Berrig, our agency's clinical intake manager. Kirsten, with the term clinical in your title, I'm guessing that you're on a different side of things than Courtney.
Yep. So I manage all of our incoming referrals to the clinical team, as my name suggests.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds like a huge responsibility. Can you tell us what's involved in that process?
Yeah. So essentially how things work here is we're a 2-woman team. So it's me and the lovely intake coordinator, Casey Ward, who is seen below. And essentially we operate largely through the phone. So we take calls predominantly from caregivers, but we also speak a lot with just other community members, whether they be from the hospital or schools, to talk about cases that they're considering referring. And then once we're speaking with that child's legal guardian, we go ahead and complete an intake over the phone. And essentially that is to be the least burdensome for the family while also gathering the information we need to make the determination for service. So we gather basic demographic information, the trauma history and symptoms, as well as like medication, and essentially go from there. So depending on the service, they would be likely placed on a waiting list, and yeah, that's essentially kind of how it works.
Okay. And how do you know what treatment to offer families?
Good question. So it's determined by a lot of things. I would say age is a big factor for determining the modality. We have some options for younger kiddos, and then a few more options for kids like 7 and older, 6 and older, around there. So age would be one. I would say the main thing the kiddo's struggling with. So was this, long history of complex trauma, and they've been dealing with symptoms for years? Is this a recent trauma or disclosure? Is it that they are predominantly struggling with like problematic sexualized behaviors? So essentially whatever the kiddo's main need mixed with their age. And then something I forgot to mention is also like service area. We're limited to St. Louis City and County for the vast majority of our services. So that partially depends as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And do you only refer families to Casco clinicians?
No, I'm just naturally made a good little segue. So one reason that we would refer out would be, where does the family live? If they reside outside of St. Louis City or County, like I said, for the vast majority of our services, they would need to be referred out because we're grant funded. So location, need of the family. So if a child has not experienced a trauma, we're likely not going to be appropriate for them. The exception really would be problematic sexualized behavior group. But otherwise, let's say a kid who's been struggling with like depression and they don't have a trauma history, then I would refer out. Yeah, so essentially it just depends on what they're dealing with, if we can meet that need best here, or if I think we can best meet, if that child's need can be best met elsewhere. And then part of like that determining is even like Casey's about to hop off to host a meeting that we do every other month with local community partners, just to kind of keep up with what are waiting lists looking like, what are other folks providing in the area, and making determinations from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's a lot to your job, but what's your favorite part of it?
Yeah, my favorite part, I would say I have 2 favorite parts. One of my favorite parts is we're often, if not the first person, one of the very first people that these caregivers calling in have talked to about their kiddos' trauma. And so just being able to be a supportive person for them and like validating whatever they're feeling, the grief, the stress, the chaos, while also like being able to say, hey, I think we're going to be able to get your kiddo some help here. So that, and then the biggest part that I would say I love, I don't know if I can pick 2 favorites, but would be just knowing that we are connecting these kids to counseling, that especially after hearing like all the symptoms that they're experiencing and often how long they've been struggling, we get a lot of joy from being able to connect them with someone who's going to be able to do some good work with them.
Yeah, your job encompasses all the clinical work that we do, but specifically today we're focused on Project Contact. So I wanted to ask, how do you connect with Project Contact?
Yeah, so like we were talking about earlier, part of the job, a big part of my job is determining the modality that would be best for a kiddo. And sometimes that is CFITSI, as we call it here, or CFTSI. So if that is the best choice for the kiddo, per what I know at the time, then I would essentially, like, I complete that intake still, and then I would pass along that family to one of our family engagement specialists. and assign them to them, and then they would start all the aspects of their job with the family to get them enrolled.
Well, thanks, Kirsten. Sounds like you do some really important work. I'd like to take a moment and poll our audience again. How many of you have made referrals to Castle? NSL, can you please pull up our next poll?
Yep, coming right up. And the results should be popping up.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, and very similarly, we have 45% and 55%. So a good number of people have made referrals to Castle. So we appreciate that people know about our services, and hopefully our presentation will give more of a sense of some of the other work that we do. So much. So moving onward, we're compared to the family advocates, we also have family engagement specialists, and that's one of our agency's newest job titles. We happen to have Catherine Boyd here with us today. She's one of Project Contact's FESs. So welcome, Catherine. A title like family engagement specialist sounds a whole lot like a family advocate. Can you help us differentiate the two?
Hi, good morning. Thank you, Philip. So the family engagement specialist role was actually created specifically for Project Contact. It is indeed similar to the family advocate role, but there are parts of our duties that are very specific to Project Contact.
Okay. Can you tell me about some of the similarities first?
Of course. So for forensic referred families, we actually work really collaboratively with the forensic team, as Courtney was mentioning. We want to make sure we're providing resources that are really helpful for families, so we get to work a lot together with for those families. For community partner referred families, we typically take the lead in providing those resources. But both roles really require us to have a really good grasp of all of the available resources for families in our community. And both of us track the progress for families and provide support throughout the process. A little bit of a unique role for us is that we get to focus on helping to remove treatment barriers for families.
Yeah, and how does that work?
So it kind of depends a little bit. We get a lot of different referral requests. So some general requests usually kind of are around housing, rental support, food, clothing, basic necessities, utility support. But we get some requests for things that may be a little bit more unique. We're able to kind of dive in a little bit more into needs. Like my colleague Susie spent a lot of time trying to connect a family to resources when they were moving out of state, so they could still continue therapy services when they moved. I worked with a few families recently that were trying to deal with some hospital bills, and that required actually coordinating with medical providers, actually the state, the forensic team, and clinical staff. So there was a lot of coordination involved in that, and we were and some outside providers as well to make sure that was taken care of for the family. So it just kind of really depends on what's needed for the family.
Yeah, sure. I imagine there are also other things you're responsible for besides case management.
Yeah, of course. Definitely. So in addition to connecting families to resources, a lot of our job is making sure and helping that they understand the paperwork process, helping them with onboarding. So helping them fill out paperwork like the consent to treatment, authorization to release information, consent and assent for research, and kind of explaining questions about any of those forms that they might have, giving them an overview of the process and answering those types of questions. And then once we've kind of been able to work through that process, we have some assessment measures we work through with families. And then we're able to connect them to resources after that. Once we've done those things, we're able to connect families to one of the awesome clinicians that you'll meet next.
Okay. So do you only meet with families the one time?
No. So typically we meet with them 3 times. So we'll meet with them at the very beginning before they start treatment, which is when we go over all of that onboarding paperwork, the first set of measures, and work on getting them connected to resources. Then we meet with them again after they complete treatment, and then we follow up 3 months after. And then we do complete those measures again. And we're available to families kind of throughout the process as a support person. If they need anything, we're always available to kind of connect and provide additional support.
Okay. Yeah, so it sounds like you have to be fairly confident about technology in your role. What are the assessments that you have families complete?
So we do have to be pretty technology savvy. So there's a couple of different measures. There's the child PTSD symptom scale, which is completed by the child and the caregiver. There's the child and youth resiliency measure and the self-efficacy questionnaire, which is completed by kids over the age of 12. So we have them complete a couple of those measures, and we'd have them do them a couple of times, like I mentioned. We actually use quite a bit of different technology. We're the ones who typically set up patient portal accounts. We use a lot of within our EHR system, and we use iPads for our forms. So sometimes there's some troubleshooting around that, and it kind of depends on a family's comfortability with using iPads as to the amount of support we're going to provide around that. And then we do provide telehealth appointments. So sometimes we're doing these appointments on Zoom.
And what happens if they're not comfortable with technology?
If they're not comfortable, we're going to kind of walk them through a little bit more with that and provide some additional support working through those forms with them. So it just really depends on what their need is. So we play a lot by the ear.
Yeah, it sounds like you adapt as you need to.
Yeah.
What is your favorite part of the job?
Probably pretty similar to a lot of what has probably already been mentioned. Being able to provide support to kids and family in our area, and also being able to see them progress through treatment. I'm one of the people that gets to schedule the families, so I know they're getting set up with an amazing staff member. So getting able to check in with them as they go, and then to see them after treatment and see how much things have changed for them is really a joy.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Catherine. We appreciate all your support for Project Contact as well. So this would be a great time for our next poll, whether it be called a family advocate or family engagement specialist. Many agencies have roles that are specifically for non-therapeutic supports for clients. So what, if anything, is that role called at your agency? Yanacel, could you please pull up that poll?
Of course, coming right up. Alrighty, I'll be showing the results right now.
Thank you. Are there actual answers for the poll result? I know this one's open-ended.
If you would like, let me see if I can pull them up. So
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah. Yeah, this one's a little different, so there's no multiple choice. Yeah. We can wait for if it's gonna take a sec, we can always take a look later. Or we
yeah,
can just
it might.
uh
My bad. It might take a second, or if anybody would like to share the actual title while I.
yeah, and people can just put this one in the chat too, because it's not really like calculated. So you can always just put in the chat what you what titles there are for. Yeah, we see family support specialist. Any other ones that people have? Yeah, we have, yeah, deputy juvenile officer. Our DJOs function very similarly. That's great. We know there's all sorts of different titles and names. Here we have program advisor for child welfare programs at CFS. Awesome. It's kind of neat to see the diversity in titles and some of the nuances, the intersections of work that happens, and sometimes it's there's some key differences as well. So we look forward to getting to know other programs as we connect with them. Well, I want to do a quick check-in with Jessie to see how our tally is going for Project Contact.
It is going great. I am definitely on my second pencil.
Okay, okay. Well, thanks, Jessie. We'll keep it going. Earlier, Kirsten, Catherine, and they mentioned some of the responsibilities for Project Contact and how to get families connected to our clinicians. We just so happen to have one of them here with us today. So welcome, Charlotte. Tell us what you do at Caskell.
Thank you so much, Philip. So I am a clinician here at Caskell. I've been here for just about 2 years and provide trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, integrative treatment for complex trauma, and also I'm a task facilitator, which is our parent support and education group at Caskell. And then I also provide CFITC as a part of Project Contact. Happy to be here.
Okay. And Joel mentioned CFITC earlier. Can you tell us more about that therapeutic modality?
Yeah, for sure. So it is a brief therapeutic model for kids who have experienced trauma, kids or adolescents, and it's designed to prevent the development of post-traumatic stress disorder. And the way that it does that is through firstly, decreasing avoidance around the trauma. And then secondly, through helping to increase the child or adolescent sense of support from a caregiver of like whoever is involved. Since we know that the presence of a supportive caregiver or adult is a major protective factor in regards to the development of like mental health concerns in the aftermath of a traumatic event.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned that CFITC, or the Child and Family Traumatic Stress Intervention, is a brief model. How can you possibly hope to prevent PTSD with just 5 to 8 sessions?
Yeah, good question. So the whole idea behind it is that you're kind of helping the caregiver be able to support the child or adolescent through discussions of the trauma. And then you're also decreasing the avoidance, which is responsible for the development of PTSD. And so even though we're not doing like major exposure work, through talking kind of around the trauma and providing psychoeducation, they're getting like some gradual exposure to.
Yeah, and can you talk to us a little bit about eligibility for therapy?
Yeah, so CFITSE is for 7 to 17-year-olds who have experienced a trauma or have disclosed in the last 60 days. And a caregiver needs to be willing to participate as well. And this can be anybody. It does not have to be like a biological parent or whatever. It could be, we've worked with foster parents, we've worked with grandparents. So there's a lot of flexibility. Sometimes older siblings, as long as they're over the age of 18, they can be a great support. So there's a lot of flexibility in who that caregiver could be.
Okay. And are you able to work with multiple caregivers in the home?
Yeah, we have done that in the past. We've done multiple caregivers at once. The only criteria is that we don't work with a caregiver who is the alleged perpetrator of the trauma, if it was a case of abuse.
All right. So compared to other therapeutic models you use, how do you like CFITSE?
I like it a lot. I find that it's like super, super validating for both children and their caregivers, and really normalizing and just makes them feel just a little, oftentimes like the first session. So we do individual sessions first with the caregiver, and then second with an individual session with the child or adolescent. And I find that, oftentimes the individual session with the child, they come in really, really terrified. Sometimes it's their first time attending like a therapy session, and it's like they know it's around like this really intense experience that they had. And so it's really great to be able to see them kind of relax over time across the different therapy sessions.
So you mentioned that in the first session it's just caregiver and the second one is just the kiddo. What are you kind of doing in those sessions?
Yeah, great question. So during the first session, what we're doing is we're assessing their own, the caregiver's own traumatic symptoms. Since we know that oftentimes, like just hearing about their child's trauma in and of itself can be really traumatic. Sometimes they were also directly involved in the traumatic experience themselves, and so have their own trauma symptoms because of that. And then other times they just have their own trauma histories. And so we want to get a better sense of where they're at emotionally, to firstly determine if they can be a good support for their child during conjoint sessions. And then it also allows us to refer the caregiver to their own like individual services if they need that. And if they're willing to go forward with individual services. And then it also allows us to, I know that Catherine already shared about like supporting the families with case management needs. It also allows us to do like a second assessment of their potential needs, because so many of our families experience like secondary adversities as a result of the trauma that they've gone through. So sometimes like if there's, again, domestic violence like situations, then they might be experiencing housing insecurity and that kind of thing. And so we can work to provide, we collaborate with the FESs, the family engagement specialists like Catherine and Susie to meet those needs. And then the second session is with the child only, and that's where we're assessing trauma history, and trauma symptoms, although we do that with the caregiver as well beforehand. And then we're also kind of assessing the child's or adolescent's perceived relationship with their caregiver. And then we're normalizing symptoms that the child is experiencing, providing psychoeducation about avoidance and trauma in general and trauma symptoms that they're experiencing.
Sounds like there's a lot of normalizing of what's occurred and having a chance to kind of see where the family is at in that first 2 sessions. So then what happens in the next 3 sessions or next number of sessions?
Yes, sure. And so then we have, oftentimes it's 5 sessions, although we do have the flexibility to go up to 8 sessions, which is really nice because some of our families just need a few more sessions to talk about skills or other things. In the 3rd session, we start to compare the child and parents' assessment measures, specifically about the child's trauma symptoms. And so the goal of this section is really it's not really about the assessment measures, it's more to foster discussions about the child's symptoms. Oftentimes there's a disconnect between what the caregiver perceives the child to be experiencing and what the child actually is experiencing. And then we encourage those conversations to continue to happen outside of therapy sessions. And then we also teach skills during the session based on the child or adolescent's needs. So for instance, if a kid is experiencing intrusive thoughts, we might teach them coping strategies, like deep breathing or progressive muscle relaxation. And we teach this to both the child and the caregiver so that the caregiver can kind of encourage the child to practice these as needed. And then we're also sometimes, depending on the situation, teaching the caregiver validation skills as well. And then in the 4th and 5th sessions, we continue the skill development and continue to assess symptoms with the caregiver and child together. And then we're also determining future needs once they've finished treatment.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like there's 3 major parts with assessing symptoms kind of throughout therapy, knowing that things could change quite a bit, and also providing that communication support and helping families have that open line of communication about trauma symptoms, and then also providing practical, helpful, healthy coping skills. Okay, well, that's really neat to hear. And you mentioned that at some point, whether the 5th session or a few additional sessions, a child's ready to graduate. And how do you know when that is, and what if they have additional needs?
Yeah, for sure. So sometimes it depends on the symptoms that the child or adolescent is experiencing at the end of treatment. So we're assessing throughout the entire time. And if they're still experiencing pretty high post-traumatic stress disorder type symptoms, or other trauma type symptoms, then we often will just put them on, we'll communicate with our amazing intake, Kirsten and Casey, to get them onto the wait list for long-term services. But we find that even if this is the case, families really appreciate having had CFITSI, since our wait list sometimes can be kind of lengthy. It allows them to acquire skills to use in the interim while they're waiting for long-term services. And then sometimes there are fewer trauma-related symptoms. Well, they're still trauma-related, but we see that there's more depression potentially than PTSD type symptoms. And so we might refer out to a CBT specialist or something. And And then other times, children and adolescents seem to be okay, and they don't really need additional services. And usually in this case, we'll do like a follow-up appointment just to be sure that they're still okay, like a month out. And always let them know that, you know, if for some reason they need you know, treatment in the future, to always feel free to contact us so that we can provide referrals or get them on our wait list. Yeah.
Well, thanks for all that helpful information, Charlotte. It sounds like CFITC's a good fit for many clients, but not all. Let's look at some examples. Yanisel, can you please pull up slide number 1 for us? And using Zoom thumbs up or down, we're gonna try to see if this client would be appropriate. Okay. So this first one, we have a referral about a child that's 10 years old, made disclosure of abuse last month, lives with grandparents who have adopted him, and family speaks Spanish. And even if you don't know, you could put in your best guess based on what you've heard. See some thumbs up. Yeah, it's hard for me to see everyone, but yeah, this one, the referral would be appropriate, right? We have the age is appropriate. The disclosure was in the last month, and at Casco will take referrals up to 60 days, and they have caregivers who will be attending with them, and we will work with interpreters as necessary, and we also have some Spanish-speaking clinicians at our agency, so that is an absolutely appropriate case. We're going to move on to slide number 2. Okay, so this referral's for a 4-year-old, disclosed abuse last week, having behavioral problems, and living with bio parents. Give people a chance to put thumbs up, thumbs down. Okay. Yeah, from what I could see, I think mostly thumbs down, and you would be correct. Unfortunately, it's the age eligibility. So for CFITC, we serve kids ages 7 to 17, and part of that is the communication tools we use. They're based on measures that are normed, the UCLA PTSD-RI, like a shortened version that Yale University produced. And so usually around 7, that's when they can best comprehend and have that discussion. So unfortunately, if they're under 7, they're not current referrals for Project Contact. So referral number 3, we have 17-year-old, was in a serious car accident a few weeks ago, lives with foster parents in St. Louis City. I'll give people a chance to respond. Yeah, I see mostly thumbs up, and absolutely correct. We don't just see cases for abuse and neglect. Any kind of trauma that causes trauma symptoms, serious car accidents could count for those. And this would be an appropriate referral for Project Contact. And one of the reasons why we wanted to have this project is knowing that the forensic team captures a lot of the abuse and neglect cases. But there are accidents, there are other types of trauma that's occurring, and sometimes those don't get referred in a timely manner where we can get to these cases. Okay, let's look at slide number 4. We have 12-year-old immigrated to US from Morocco 3 weeks ago after family home destroyed by earthquake, and currently living with uncle. See a lot of thumbs up. Okay. And yes, this would generally be an okay case as long as the uncle has legal custodianship and can sign off on paperwork and participate in therapy. As all of our services, we do need someone that has the rights to sign off on the child participating. But if the uncle has the rights to do so, they're absolutely welcome to participate in therapy. Referral number 5. So we have 9 years old, long history of abuse and neglect disclosed 6 months ago, and living with adoptive aunts. What do people think about this one? I see some thumbs up and some thumbs down. Yeah, so yeah, so for this case, it's unfortunately not appropriate for Project Contact because the abuse and neglect was disclosed 6 months ago, and so that's going to be over 60 days. We could still serve these clients, so Kirsten could still connect the child to one of our other trauma clinicians for different therapeutic model. It's just that for Project Contact, the goal is to reduce trauma symptoms as much as we can within the paratraumatic period in that first 60 days that we have them coming in. Okay. So it's clear to me that Project Contact has its processes and procedures down to a science. It makes me wonder if all that work is having an impact on the clients they serve. So to help answer that question, we're going to talk to Joel Epstein, the principal investigator and program evaluator. And Joel, what impact is Project Contact having?
Yeah, Philip, thanks. This is part of the project that I get really excited about. So, Yanzel, if you wouldn't mind pulling up the next slides, please. Yeah, so when I go out and I talk to community partners about Project Contact, this is where I think I really connect with them, and they get really excited about Project Contact, because we, unlike many agencies across the area, when a client is appropriate for services with us, we're getting them in from the day we first hear about a family having need. We're getting them into services within less than 10 days. This is unprecedented across the area, with so many agencies having wait lists for 2, 3, 4, even 6 months. Now, the 10 days, that includes weekends, and families often have other responsibilities. So really, we're getting families in as quickly as possible. And then the other neat thing, I think, is that the time from their first appointment to their last appointment is just about a month and a half. And so we're being really responsive to get families in and getting them the help in a really timely manner. So, Yamza, let's go to the next slide, if you wouldn't mind. Yeah, and here we can see some of the outcomes of the folks who are coming in to Project Contact for CFITC. You can see that well over half of the clients who come to us graduate. The ones who don't graduate, maybe they're transferred prior to completion, or they drop out just because sometimes families have other more pressing needs and they're not able to commit to participating in therapy. But I think what's really cool is that we are graduating most of our clients, and a good quarter of those folks who come in, they don't need any additional treatment. After those 5 to 8 sessions, both the family and the clinician are feeling like, you know what, the family has a real handle on how to proceed, and they're good to go. There's also a handful of our clients who they graduate from CFITSE and they don't no longer need trauma treatment, but there are, like Charlotte had mentioned, there are some other issues that they're dealing with, and so we can refer them on to that. So I think overall what this is showing is that we're being really responsive to the families, and the families are responding well. Janzel, can you go over the, yeah. So earlier, Catherine had talked about some of the measures that she helps administer the families. And I'm really pleased to show that Project Contact is making a difference in the lives of our clients, and CFITSE is helping reduce the symptomatology that the kids are having. So in this slide, we see that the caregiver at before therapy, they're rating their child's symptoms, trauma symptoms fairly high, and after therapy, the rating of symptoms go down. But Janzel, if you go to the next slide, this is really remarkable that the children's rating of their own symptoms drop dramatically. And so this is really gratifying to see that just in those 5 to 8 sessions, kids are feeling like, wow, the trauma that I had been feeling before, it's not so overwhelming. Now, typically, in much of the research that we see with CFITSE, this is where researchers stop. They just are reporting those reductions in trauma symptomatology. But for Project Contact, we're going a step further, and I think this is a really important contribution that we're able to show, is we're looking not at reductions in trauma symptomatology, but we're also looking at post-traumatic growth. So Janzel, could you go to the next slide, please? Here, we're looking at the caregiver's ratings of their child's resiliency. Before therapy, they're a little low, but after therapy, the caregiver is feeling, yeah, my child is experiencing more resiliency. And now, Janzel, let's look at the next one. And similarly, we're seeing that the child is feeling much more resilient after participating in CFITSE. Now let's look at that last slide here. And this is really, really remarkable. And the amount of increase in self-efficacy that children are reporting after participating in CFITSE. This is a very, very large and significant gain in self-efficacy. So kids are really feeling much better and much more able to handle things on their own after participating in the therapy. So now let's look at the next slide, if you wouldn't mind, So kind of as an overview of what we're offering to our community partners, we have quick access to treatment for the referrals that you all provide. Of course, all of our services are free, and we're dedicated to providing this trauma-informed training. For if you have staff that need training, we can help train them in trauma-informed processing practices. If you ever have any, if you're not sure about whether a referral would be appropriate or not, we're always more than happy to do consultations with you. And oftentimes I'm talking to community partners and they're saying, what about this case? could Project Contact take this case? And so we're always trying to actively engage our community partners. And we also have the ability to take referrals either via the phone, or if you feel like you're going to want to have many referrals to us, we have several of our community partners set up in our patient portal, and they can refer to us via online forms, and that really expedites things as well. So for referrals, you can call Kirsten and Casey at this number. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me via email at any time. I believe, Yanazel, you're going to make these slides available to folks if they want them. And so you can reach out and you can have this information whenever you need.
So sorry, I want to make a little, I think we got a typo on this slide.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Sorry about that.
No, yeah, the phone number is actually, it's just the middle digits are wrong. So it's 314-516-7330. So those
Thanks,
middle
Kirsten.
three should be a 516.
Sorry about that. Thank you for catching that.
Thanks, great catch, Kristen. I just want to thank everyone who have helped us learn about Project Contact today. It's clear that you all care deeply about the work you do and are having a great impact on the families you serve. So now it's time to announce our Project Contact tally. So everyone, please enter in the chat the number of times you heard Project Contact this morning, and we'll see how close it is to Jesse's tally for the winner. We have some very close numbers, so. All right, last call for anyone entering before we have Jesse review. Okay, so Jesse, what was your total?
So I see a couple of people have the same answer as me. So I got 26.
Okay, 26. So we have a few people, and Yanazel is gonna help make sure we know who all got the same answer.
Yes, if those who had 26 can directly send me or Katie Showers your email address, then we'll be contacting you about your gift.
Right. Well, congratulations to those that are receiving prizes, and just congratulations to everyone in general for paying such good attention. I see the numbers are so close. We're glad that you all played along and listened. So at this point, we just want to open it up for general questions. It could be to any part of the team, and we'll be glad to answer questions about Project Contact. People are welcome to type in the chat or just ask questions directly by unmuting, if you have any. Yeah, so that's a great question about children under age 7. So unfortunately, right now, not for a contact, but for our other services, we do have trauma services for children under 7. So they can still call that same intake number that goes to Kirsten and Casey, our intake manager and coordinator. So they would be on the wait list for longer term trauma therapy, and we have various models for children that are younger than 7. Yeah. Some of those, maybe people might have heard of TFCBT that goes for younger kids. We also have CPP, the child parent psychotherapy, and also PCIT as well. Guidance to other county CAC offices. Is this a question about making referrals to other places, or like what other people have to offer? As far as if it's regarding whether they have CFITC or not, I believe we're the only service providers that are trained to do CFITC in the area. So it would be harder to find that resource in other places. Yale University is the one that developed CFITC, and people have to train directly with the developers there in order to become certified and go through 6 months worth of consultation as well. So as far as I know, I don't know, Kirsten, you have other ideas of other agencies and intake, but as far as I know, we're the only ones in the area, maybe in the state.
No, I don't. And if I get a call for essentially outside the service area, if I do know of referrals, then I provide those. And I also usually would refer people to like the local CAC, which you can just find from a Google search, like CAC for Benton County, and it'll pull up whatever that is, and then give them a number for that. Because even if they may not offer this program, the Child Advocacy Center in any given area should have an idea of the best counseling options in their region for the family. So that's always a good place to direct folks to.
Any other questions? Yanis, I'll put the survey to obtain your certificate of attendance. So please fill that out so you can get credit for your time here.
It looks like Brianna Jones has a question.
Oh, okay. Is that in the chat?
No, I raised my
Oh,
hand with
I see. Okay, I see you now.
emotions. I
Sorry.
didn't. You're
I was,
okay. I just didn't want to.
yeah, I was only looking in the chat for a second. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I was just curious what your like what is the most prevalent need? Like what form of trauma do you guys see often? If that makes sense.
Yeah, I can probably talk about it anecdotally. I don't know, Jolie, if there's parsed out research about it.
Not at this point, no.
Okay, and other
Go ahead.
clinicians, feel free to chime in. You know, as a CAC, we do get a lot of abuse and neglect cases. I would say a good amount of sexual abuse cases, some physical abuse, some neglect. We're trying to capture kind of the full spectrum of other types of traumas. Occasionally we'll see car accidents. I've had like BB gun accidents over the years, ATV types of accidents as well, witnessing violence, whether in the community or within the home. Those are all like a little less, but they're still like things that we tend to see. I don't know if others have other types of traumas that.
Yeah, we also see a lot of our clients have more than one trauma. That doesn't mean that they wouldn't qualify for services here as long as they have at least one traumatic event. But you know, a lot of them will be like complex trauma, or there is I see a lot of gun violence,
Yeah.
neglect. We'll also see kids for neglect as well.
Yeah, and that probably speaks to some of the numbers that we saw from Joel's slides. Some families already came in with a history of trauma. It's just that they're being treated for this most recent one, and we can still help a great deal by reducing the current trauma symptoms, but some of the previous trauma symptoms might have set in. And that's why you might see some of those referrals for longer term treatment as well. Any other questions? Well, we really appreciate everybody's time. As you have questions pop up, Joel and I are always available for consultation and for going through cases. So if there's any question about like whether this is a good referral, feel free to reach out to us. And intake is there for all sorts of trauma cases besides contact as well. It's good to see everyone, and hope we'll be connecting with you.